Whether technology can conquer death. At first glance, it may seem absurd to suppose that technology can conquer death. However, one might ask in what sense technology today is trying effectively to conquer death. In what sense does technology pursue that goal? Now, as long as we understand the tension between nature and technology as simply one version of the classical tension between nature and art, we fail entirely to understand what technology is today, what it's trying to achieve, and thus we underestimate the significance of the project of overcoming death. So now, in what way would today's technology differ from classical art, or techne in Greek, which is to say, well, we could render that as technique, everything that people make and do to address human problems. So, for instance, we have the cobbler who makes shoes that helps us, therefore, cope with certain physical limitations that we have. We have the blacksmith who helps us in the same respect. But then we have modern technology. Now, modern technology, which of course can project itself onto everything that is pre-modern, but that's simply a form of obscurantism. It's covering up its own genesis, in other words. Modern technology does not merely try to solve our problems, it redefines our problems, and in some decisive respect, it creates new problems. And why? Well, because it's trying to redefine our ends in a way that enables technology to be victorious over, well, over nature, to master nature. Now, what does it mean to master nature ultimately? It means to master death, to conquer death. Now, as long as we understand art as a predicate of nature, so we have art as imitation of nature to some extent, so an art that presupposes a natural foundation, we fail to understand what technology is in the modern world. This is not to say that we fail to see it from without, but we fail to appreciate what it is trying to achieve. In other words, we fail to see it from within. And therefore, we fail to respond to it effectively. So if modern technology has deficiencies, flaws, we fail to address them coherently. So, what is technology all about? What is it trying to achieve? Well, if modern technology, does not understand itself as mere techne, or art, juxtaposed to nature, then how does it understand itself? In other words, how does it function? Well, modern technology sees itself as the repository of nature. Modern technology presupposes, we could say, a technological reading of nature. What does this mean? It means that nature is no longer understood as fundamental. It's there. It's a ground. And everything comes from nature and goes back to nature. Rather, and this by making strategic use of non-materialist notions from the ancient world, as well as certain modes of discourse proper of medieval Christianity. Well, modern technology is functioning, is actually practiced, because modern technology is a way of living. It is exercised in continuity with a technological conception of nature. To understand modern technology, one must understand the conception of nature that it presupposes. Nature is no longer a foundation again, but it is that which is evolving in the direction of technology. So when we look back, we see traces of what is to come. And what is to come ultimately is a technological way of life. What is this technological way of life? Well, it is a life certainly of transformation, where nature is fuel for the emergence of forms of life that we call technological. Forms of life that are, overcoming, or that have already overcome death. In what way can technology aspire to even claim to be overcoming death? It is quite simple, and Hegel already points to an answer. In fact, he articulates an answer when he says that man is to carry on the work of death. Death is no longer something that remains in the past, but something that enters into the present, and through the present into the future. But it is not enough to say this, for indeed it is obvious that the present is falling back into the past. What I am now, I will no longer be in an instant after the now. I am already not what I was just now. So I fall into the past continuously. Now, in a progressive Hegelian conception, well, my falling back into the past is not the end of the story, because the past is driving the resources that it receives back into the future. So through the negation of the present, the past, which is the realm of death, or nature, enters into the future. When it enters into the future, it enters as the result of the death of the present. The death of the present is not the end of the story. There is a recycling of the present. So how does the present die successfully? It dies by structuring itself technologically. In other words, understanding itself in the context of this technological dialectic, progressive dialectic. The present sacrificed or transforms itself into something new, something future, by entering into the past. It enters into the past by sacrificing itself, consciously or self-consciously. It no longer lets itself go, but it is through the work, the modern work of man, that man dies and is resurrected in the fruit of his work. So this fruit of his work is what the past is, or nature is fueling. Nature as fuel is being used, right, transformed into a machine. This machine, or an apparatus, is the whole ensemble of the technology that we have, but not only as a tool, but technology as an order of things. So as a society, and the human being is now reconstituted on technological grounds. So we have the prospect of in vitro fertilization, we have the creation of organic, the formation of synthetic organisms. We have, therefore, the replacement of old nature with a technological foundation. However, it would be to underestimate that new foundation, to say that it is simply something set up or posited in contrast with nature. No, quite to the contrary. It is seen, the whole technological apparatus is seen as fueled by nature. So nature is no longer just there, but it's entering into the technological universe. How is it doing this? Again, it is doing this through the self-sacrifice of the present. And the self-sacrifice of the present is really all about self-conscious work. Man is dedicated to this ideal. He dies for that ideal by dying. He essentially is drawing the material of death, so nature, into this new world. This is the underlying assumption for the modern world. We are sacrificing ourselves, our present, for the future. What does that really mean? It means that we take what is mortal in us, and therefore what is already past, so nature as our own past, and we transform it so that it can be, reborn, as it were, into the future. So in this respect, we see that death is overcome by technology. The past is overcome. So the past as past, the past that is simply there and that is not recycled into the future technological society, the one that resists digitalization, doesn't fit, should be canceled. The phenomenon that we are familiar with, that of cancel culture, as it is so called today, is but, we could say, a byproduct of this modern logic. The canceling of the past comes hand in hand with the reconstruction of the past in technological terms, or sound prettier, the scientific reconstruction of the past. This is what technology is all about. And in this sense, death is overcome. In what sense, finally? In the sense that death is fueling, is used as fuel. So it's fueling the use that we make of it as fuel. So that's closed circuit. It's fueling the use that we make of it as fuel to convert into a technological world or apparatus or system. So death is entering into the machine. The machine, we could say, therefore, is a machinery of death. It is pregnant with death. It has death as its content. What will therefore or thereby this machine achieve? This machine filled with death, the one that has digitized our past. What could it possibly achieve? Well, for one thing, it achieves the transposition of the present into the future so that the present no longer needs to self-sacrifice, to sacrifice itself. We no longer need to work for the ideal. The ideal will have a place for us. It will recycle us. It will transplant us at this point within itself. It will save us from the burden, spare us the burden of labor. We no longer need to work for the machine. The machine will do our work for us. And at this point, what can we do? We can start dreaming in the machine. We can start dreaming, if this will be, the machine will be the matrix within which we can dream. And of course, at some point, we could ask, well, what does this machine filled with death keep us there for as dreamers? What's the point in keeping us? What's the point in keeping human beings? In producing human beings? Well, the machine could be, in principle, self-sufficient. The human being could very well be entirely expendable at this point. Now, there is no point to the human being once the technological apparatus has been thoroughly established. We have integrated the present into the future, and now what does the future do? What does it strive for? And aside from that human element, which was supposed to be saved from death, from the compulsion of dying, there would seem to be no raison d'être, no reason to be there for technology. So at this point, in principle, we could shut the circuit. In other words, everybody's dreaming in the system, and we might as well stop that too. Now, when that stops, the structure of the technological system would seem to collapse. And so the form of death would seem to fall apart. And so, well, the conquering of death would convert, in that case, in the triumph of death.